The rain soaked through Shayla Thompson's thin red coat as she stood on the sidewalk, watching people in expensive suits rush past her into the marble lobby of the Horizon Tower. Her hands trembled, but not from the cold. The cardboard box under her arm, containing the few personal items from her locker, was getting soggy. Inside that box was a termination letter, printed on crisp white paper that seemed to mock her with its corporate letterhead. She had 3 days. 3 days until her landlord would change the locks on the apartment she shared with her younger brother. 3 days until everything she'd fought so hard to hold together would fall completely apart. The security guard had escorted her out 2 hours ago. Budget cuts, her supervisor had said, not meeting her eyes. We have to let go of the night cleaning crew. I'm sorry, Shayla. Sorry didn't pay rent. Sorry didn't buy Tyler's medicine. Sorry didn't put food on the table. But there was one chance. One small, humiliating chance. The company's annual charity dance was in 3 days. Every employee who attended received a $500 bonus as thanks for supporting the company's charitable image. The invitation had come before her termination, and according to the employee handbook, anyone invited was entitled to that bonus if they showed up. $500 wouldn't solve everything, but it would buy her time. Maybe 2 weeks to find another job. Maybe enough to keep the lights on while she figured out what to do next. There was just one problem. The invitation required a formal date. No exceptions. Shayla had no one. Her friends were as broke as she was, working double shifts just to survive. Her brother was 16 and sick with pneumonia. She hadn't dated anyone in over a year because she barely had time to sleep, let alone maintain a relationship. She was out of options. That's when she saw him. A tall white man in his early 30s stepped out of the revolving door, pulling his gray suit jacket closed against the rain. He had dark hair, slightly messy from the weather, and tired eyes that suggested he'd worked a long day. But there was something about his face, something kind in the set of his mouth, that made Shayla take a step forward before her courage could fail her. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice barely audible over the rain. He turned, surprised, his hand already reaching for his umbrella. Shayla's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. This was crazy. This was absolutely insane. But desperation makes people do insane things. "I know this is going to sound strange," she said, walking closer, rain dripping down her face. "And I know you don't know me. But I need to ask you something." The man studied her for a moment, his expression shifting from surprise to concern. "Are you all right? Do you need help?" The genuine worry in his voice nearly broke her. "I need a date," Shayla blurted out. "To a dance. A charity dance. It's in 3 days and I know this is crazy, but I just lost my job and I need to attend this event to get a bonus that might keep me from losing my apartment, but I can't go alone and I have no one else to ask." She was rambling now, words tumbling out in a desperate rush. "I'm not asking for anything weird. Just, would you pretend to be my date for one evening? Just a few hours. I wouldn't ask if I wasn't completely out of options. I have a little brother who's sick and we're going to be evicted and I just..." Her voice cracked. "I just need this one thing to work out." The man's expression softened. He didn't laugh at her. He didn't walk away. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, considering her words with an intensity that made her feel truly seen for the first time in months. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Shayla. Shayla Thompson. I'm James." He extended his hand and she shook it, confused by the formality of the gesture given her desperate plea. "What day is the dance?" "Friday night. 7 o'clock. It's at the Riverside Hotel downtown." The words came out in a rush. "I know it's a lot to ask. I know you probably think I'm crazy." "I don't think you're crazy," James said. His voice was calm, steady, like solid ground beneath her feet. "I think you're someone in a difficult situation who's doing what she needs to do to take care of her family." Shayla stared at him, waiting for the rejection, the polite excuse, the inevitable no. "I'll be your date," James said simply. "What?" Shayla wasn't sure she'd heard him correctly. "I'll go with you to the dance. Friday at 7. We should probably meet beforehand to work out the details." He pulled out his phone. "Can I get your number?" Shayla's hands shook as she recited her number. This couldn't be real. People didn't just agree to things like this. Strangers didn't help without wanting something in return. "Is this some kind of joke?" she asked, suspicious despite her desperation. "No joke," James said, typing her information into his phone. "Everyone needs help sometimes. I'm glad you asked me." He looked up from his phone, meeting her eyes with an honesty that made her chest tighten. "I'll call you tomorrow and we can meet to discuss everything." "Okay." Shayla nodded, unable to form words. She felt like she might cry right there on the sidewalk. Are you going to be all right getting home? James asked, glancing at the rain. I'll take the bus, Shayla managed to say. James reached into his jacket and pulled out his wallet. Shayla's pride flared immediately. I don't want your money, she said quickly. It's for a cab, James said gently. You're soaking wet and carrying a box. Please, let me do this one small thing. The way he said it, so respectful of her dignity even as he offered help, made Shayla's resistance crumble. She accepted the folded bills, enough for a cab ride with some left over. Thank you, she whispered. I'll call you tomorrow, Shayla, James said. We'll figure everything out. I promise. He opened his umbrella and walked toward the parking garage, leaving Shayla standing in the rain, clutching money in one hand and hope in her heart for the first time in months. Could this really be happening? Could one moment of desperate courage actually change everything? Have you ever been so desperate that you had to ask a complete stranger for help? What would you do in Shayla's situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe to see how this incredible story unfolds. You won't believe what happens next. The coffee shop was warm and smelled like cinnamon and fresh bread. Shayla sat in a corner booth, wearing her only clean pair of jeans and a green sweater with a small hole near the hem that she tried to hide with strategic positioning. She'd arrived 15 minutes early, her stomach twisted in knots of anxiety and disbelief. James had called yesterday just like he'd promised. His voice over the phone had been the same as in person. Calm, kind, not at all what she expected from a man who wore suits that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Now, watching the door, Shayla wondered if he would actually show up. Maybe he'd thought better of his impulsive agreement. Maybe he'd realized how strange the whole situation was and decided to ghost her. She wouldn't blame him. The bell above the door chimed and James walked in. He was dressed more casually today, dark jeans and a blue button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He spotted her immediately and smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes and made him look younger, less tired than he'd seemed in the rain. Hi, he said, sliding into the booth across from her. Have you ordered yet? No, I was waiting, Shayla said, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. James waved over a server, a young Hispanic woman with a bright smile. Can we get 2 coffees and... He looked at Shayla. Have you eaten today? Shayla's cheeks burned. I'm not hungry. Shayla. James's voice was gentle but firm. Have you eaten today? She shook her head, looking down at the table. We'll take 2 of the breakfast specials, James told the server. And can you bring some orange juice as well? After the server left, an uncomfortable silence settled between them. Shayla felt ashamed, exposed, like her poverty was a stain visible to everyone in the coffee shop. Thank you for meeting me, James said, breaking the silence. I know this situation is unusual. Unusual, Shayla repeated, letting out a short laugh. That's one word for it. Completely insane is another. Maybe, James agreed, a small smile playing at his lips. But sometimes the best things come from insane moments. The server brought their coffee, and Shayla wrapped her hands around the warm mug, letting the heat seep into her cold fingers. She hadn't realized how cold she'd been until this moment. Tell me about the dance, James said. What should I know? Shayla took a deep breath. It's a charity event. My former company, Brightway Cleaning Services, hosts it every year. All employees are invited, and everyone who attends gets a $500 bonus. It's supposed to encourage participation and make the company look good for their clients. But you were fired, James said. Yesterday morning, Shayla confirmed. But the invitation was sent 2 weeks ago, and according to the employee handbook, anyone who received an invitation is entitled to the bonus if they attend. I checked 3 times to make sure. Smart, James said, and there was approval in his voice. The thing is, Shayla continued, the invitation specifically states that attendees must bring a formal date. It's supposed to be about couples supporting charity together or something. I don't know. But if I show up alone, they won't let me in and I won't get the bonus. The server returned with their food, plates piled high with eggs, toast, bacon, and hash browns. Shayla's stomach growled audibly, and she felt her cheeks heat again. Eat, James said simply, picking up his fork. Please. Shayla ate. She tried to pace herself, to eat slowly and with dignity, but the truth was she hadn't had a real meal in 2 days. She'd been giving most of their food to Tyler, whose illness had stolen his appetite but who needed nutrition to recover. James didn't comment on how quickly she ate. He simply ate his own meal and refilled her coffee when it got low. Tell me about your brother, he said after a while. Shayla set down her fork, her plate nearly empty. Tyler. He's 16. He got pneumonia 3 weeks ago. The clinic gave us antibiotics but they made him sick so he stopped taking them. Now he's worse and we can't afford to go back. That must be scary, James said quietly. It is, Shayla admitted. The words came easier now, with food in her stomach and this stranger's kind eyes watching her without judgment. I've been taking care of him since our mom died 4 years ago. She had cancer. No insurance. The medical bills took everything and then she was gone and it was just us. I'm sorry, James said, and the way he said it made Shayla believe he truly was. What about you? Shayla asked, wanting to shift the focus away from her pain. Do you have family? No, James said, his expression becoming distant. My parents died when I was young. Car accident. I was raised by my uncle but he passed away 5 years ago. It's just me now. I'm sorry, Shayla echoed his words back to him. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, two people who understood loss in a way that didn't need explanation. About the dance, James said, steering back to practical matters. You'll need a dress. Something formal. I have a dress, Shayla lied, but her voice lacked conviction. James raised an eyebrow. Shayla. Okay, I don't have a dress, she admitted. But I can find something at a thrift store. I don't need anything fancy. Let me buy you a dress, James said. No. The word came out harder than she intended. You're already helping me by agreeing to this. I can't take your money. Why not? James asked, his tone curious rather than offended. Because I don't take charity, Shayla said, her pride rising up despite her circumstances. I work for what I have. This isn't charity, James said. Think of it as part of the arrangement. I agreed to be your date, but I can't take you to a formal event if you don't have appropriate clothing. Let me provide the dress. It's practical, not charity. Shayla wanted to refuse. Everything in her screamed to refuse. But the logical part of her brain, the part that had kept her and Tyler alive through 4 years of struggle, knew he was right. She couldn't show up to the Riverside Hotel in her worn jeans and holey sweater. I'll pay you back, she said finally. Once I get another job. However long it takes. If that makes you feel better, okay, James agreed easily. But there's no pressure. I mean that. Shayla studied him, trying to understand what motivated this man. People didn't help strangers like this. There had to be an angle, something he wanted in return. Why are you doing this? She asked bluntly. What do you get out of helping me? James was quiet for a long moment, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. Honestly? I'm not sure. But when you asked me yesterday, standing in the rain, looking like your whole world was falling apart, I saw someone with incredible courage. It takes a lot to ask for help, especially from a stranger. Most people would have given up. You didn't? That means something. You don't even know me, Shayla pointed out. Not yet, James agreed. But I'd like to. If that's okay with you. There was something in his eyes, a loneliness that mirrored her own, that made Shayla nod slowly. Okay, she said. Friends then. For now. Friends, James agreed, extending his hand across the table. Shayla shook it, and for the second time in 2 days she felt the solid warmth of hope. The boutique was small and tucked between a bookstore and a cafe on a tree-lined street Shayla had never visited before. The neighborhood was nice, the kind where people walked small dogs and sipped expensive coffee on outdoor patios despite the autumn chill. Are you sure about this? Shayla asked as James held the door open for her. This place looks expensive. It's reasonable, James said. And the owner is a friend. Trust me. Inside, the boutique was bright and airy, with soft lighting and racks of beautiful dresses in every color. Shayla felt immediately out of place in her worn jeans and green sweater. A woman emerged from the back, an older white woman with silver hair pulled into an elegant bun and warm brown eyes. She wore a simple maroon dress with a string of pearls, and her face lit up when she saw James. James, she said, her voice full of genuine affection. What a lovely surprise. Hi, Mrs. Patterson, James said, and Shayla noticed how his whole demeanor softened. I hope we're not interrupting. Never, Mrs. Patterson said. Her eyes moved to Shayla, and instead of the judgment Shayla expected, she saw only kindness. And who is this beautiful young woman? This is my friend Shayla, James said. She needs a dress for a formal event on Friday. Then you've come to the right place, Mrs. Patterson said, clasping her hands together. Come, dear. Let's find you something perfect. For the next hour, Shayla tried on dresses. Mrs. Patterson had an eye for what would work, pulling options Shayla would never have chosen herself. A red dress that was too bold. A green one that washed out her skin tone. A pink one that made her look like she was going to prom. Then Mrs. Patterson brought out a blue dress. It was simple but elegant, with a fitted bodice and a skirt that flowed to just below the knee. The color was deep and rich, like the ocean at twilight. "Try this one," Mrs. Patterson said, her eyes twinkling. In the dressing room, Shayla slipped the dress on and turned to look at herself in the mirror. She barely recognized the woman looking back at her. The dress fit perfectly, hugging her curves in all the right places. The blue color made her dark skin glow, and for the first time in years she felt beautiful. She stepped out of the dressing room and James, who had been looking at his phone, glanced up. His expression changed, something flickering in his eyes that made Shayla's heart skip. "That's the one," he said quietly. "It's perfect," Mrs. Patterson agreed. "You look stunning, dear." "How much is it?" Shayla asked, already dreading the answer. Mrs. Patterson glanced at James, then back to Shayla. $200. Shayla's stomach dropped. $200 might as well be 2,000. "I can't," she started to say. "It's already taken care of," James interrupted gently. "James, no," Shayla protested, but Mrs. Patterson was already wrapping the dress in tissue paper. "You'll also need shoes," Mrs. Patterson said, pulling out a pair of simple blue heels that matched the dress perfectly. "These should work." Before Shayla could protest again, James had paid for everything. Mrs. Patterson handed Shayla an elegant shopping bag with the dress and shoes carefully packed inside. "Thank you for coming in," Mrs. Patterson said, giving Shayla a warm hug that surprised her. "You're going to be the most beautiful woman at that dance." Outside the boutique, Shayla stopped on the sidewalk, clutching the shopping bag like a lifeline. "You shouldn't have done that." "I wanted to," James said simply. "I can't pay you back for this," Shayla said, her voice breaking slightly. "Not anytime soon." "I don't want you to pay me back," James said. He touched her shoulder gently, waiting until she looked up at him. "Shayla, I have money. More than I need. Letting me help you doesn't diminish you. It doesn't make you weak or less than. It makes you human. We all need help sometimes." Shayla's eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. "Why are you being so nice to me?" "Because someone should be," James said. "Because you deserve kindness. Because I can help, and it costs me nothing to do so." They stood there on the sidewalk, the shopping bag between them like a bridge between two different worlds. "Can I take you home?" James asked. "I'd like to meet your brother if that's okay." Shayla hesitated, embarrassed by the thought of James seeing where she lived. But she nodded, too emotionally exhausted to refuse. James's car was nice but not flashy, a dark sedan that was clean and comfortable. He drove carefully, letting Shayla give directions without comment on the neighborhoods they passed through, each one a little more rundown than the last. Her apartment building was old, the paint peeling and the front steps cracked. Shayla led James up 3 flights of stairs, past neighbors who stared at the well-dressed white man with undisguised curiosity. Inside the apartment, Tyler was lying on their sagging couch, wrapped in blankets and watching an old TV propped on a milk crate. He looked up when they entered, his eyes widening. "Tyler, this is James," Shayla said, setting down the shopping bag. "The friend I told you about." Tyler sat up, coughing into his elbow. He was tall for his age, with the same dark eyes as his sister and a face that still held traces of boyhood despite the circumstances that had forced him to grow up too fast. "Hi," Tyler said, his voice raspy from illness. "Hi, Tyler," James said, crossing the room to shake the boy's hand like he was an equal, not a sick teenager in a rundown apartment. "How are you feeling?" "Okay, I guess," Tyler said, but another cough belied his words. James chatted with Tyler for a few minutes, asking about school and what he liked to do, treating the boy with respect and genuine interest. Shayla watched from the kitchen, her heart doing something strange and uncomfortable in her chest. Before he left, James set something on the kitchen counter. "For groceries," he said quietly to Shayla. "Please." After he was gone, Shayla picked up the envelope. Inside was $1,000 in cash. She sat down at the kitchen table and finally let herself cry. The next morning, Shayla's phone rang. She answered it groggily, having barely slept after counting and recounting the money James had left. "Good morning," James's voice came through the phone, warm and awake. "Did I wake you?" "It's okay," Shayla said, sitting up in bed. Tyler was still asleep on the couch, his breathing easier than it had been in days. "What time is it?" 8 o'clock. "I wanted to call before I started work." There was a pause. "How's Tyler this morning?" The question was so unexpected, so genuinely concerned, that Shayla felt her throat tighten. He seems better. The fever broke last night. That's good, James said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. Listen, I have a friend who's a doctor. Would it be okay if I send him by to check on Tyler? No charge. Just to make sure he's really on the mend. Shayla's first instinct was to refuse. But she looked at Tyler, still so pale and thin under his pile of blankets, and her resistance crumbled. Yes, she said. Thank you. He'll come by around 2 this afternoon if that works. That works, Shayla confirmed. After they hung up, Shayla used some of the grocery money to buy fresh fruit, vegetables, chicken, and bread from the corner market. She made soup for Tyler, real soup with actual chicken and vegetables, not the canned stuff they'd been surviving on. Tyler ate 2 bowls, the first real appetite he'd shown in weeks. At 2 o'clock exactly, there was a knock on the door. The doctor was an older black man with kind eyes and gentle hands. He introduced himself as Dr. Raymond Mills and examined Tyler thoroughly, listening to his lungs, checking his temperature, looking at his throat. He's recovering well, Dr. Mills told Shayla afterward. But he needs to finish the antibiotics even if they make him feel a bit sick. The pneumonia needs to be completely cleared or it could come back worse. He pulled a prescription from his bag. I'm leaving these. Make sure he takes them all with food to help with the nausea. How much do I owe you? Shayla asked, mentally calculating how much of the grocery money she could spare. Already taken care of, Dr. Mills said with a knowing smile. James Westbrook is a good man. You're lucky to have him as a friend. After the doctor left, Shayla stared at the prescription bottle in her hand. James had thought of everything. Over the next few days, James called every morning and every evening. They talked about everything and nothing. He asked about Tyler's progress, about Shayla's day, about what she was reading or thinking. She found herself looking forward to those calls, to the sound of his voice and the way he laughed at her stories about ridiculous customers from her old cleaning jobs. There was this one office, Shayla told him during one call, where this executive would leave passive-aggressive notes everywhere. Like, please remember to empty all trash cans, not just the visible ones. I found one once that said, the baseboards are not cleaning themselves. I wanted to leave a note back that said, neither am I, but here we are. James's laugh was genuine and unreserved. Did you? Of course not. I needed the job. But I thought about it every single time I cleaned his office. You should have, James said. Some people need to be reminded that service workers are human beings. Speaking of which, Shayla said, what do you do? You've never actually told me. There was a brief pause. I work in business, James said vaguely. Corporate stuff. It's boring. Try me, Shayla pressed. I'd rather hear about you, James deflected smoothly. Have you thought about what kind of job you want to look for next? Shayla let him change the subject, though she filed away his evasiveness for later consideration. On Thursday morning, a grocery delivery arrived at Shayla's door. She hadn't ordered anything. The delivery person handed her bags full of fresh produce, meat, bread, milk, and even some treats like cookies and ice cream. I didn't order this, Shayla said, confused. The delivery person checked his tablet. Order for Thompson, this address. Already paid for, including tip. After he left, Shayla called James. You have to stop doing this. Doing what? James asked innocently. Sending me things. The groceries. The doctor. All of it. Did Tyler eat the ice cream? James asked instead of responding. That's not the point, Shayla said, but she was smiling despite herself. The point is that you and your brother have what you need, James said. And I'm able to provide that. Why is that bad? Because I can't pay you back for any of this, Shayla said, frustration and gratitude warring in her chest. I don't want you to pay me back, James said patiently. Shayla, I'm not keeping score. I'm not expecting anything in return. I'm helping because I can, and because I want to, and because you and Tyler deserve to not have to struggle so hard just to survive. Shayla sat down on her couch, the phone pressed to her ear. I don't understand you. You don't have to understand me, James said gently. You just have to let me help. Can you do that? Shayla thought about Tyler, who had color in his cheeks again. She thought about the food in her refrigerator and the dress hanging in her closet. She thought about this strange, kind man who had walked into her life in a moment of desperate courage. Yes, she said quietly. I can do that. Good, James said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. Now tomorrow is the dance. I'll pick you up at 6:30. We'll get there fashionably on time. James? Yes. Thank you, Shayla said, putting all the emotion she felt into those 2 words. For everything. You're welcome, Shayla, James said softly. I'll see you tomorrow. After she hung up, Shayla looked at her brother who was sitting up on the couch without needing to be propped by pillows, playing a video game on his old phone. He's nice, Tyler said without looking up from his game. Yeah, Shayla agreed. He really is. You like him, Tyler said, still focused on his screen but with a knowing tone. He's my friend, Shayla protested. Sure, Tyler said, grinning now. Whatever you say. Shayla threw a pillow at him, but she was smiling. For the first time in 4 years she felt something other than exhaustion and worry. She felt hope. And maybe, just maybe, something else too. Shayla stood in front of the bathroom mirror, barely recognizing herself. The blue dress fit perfectly, the heels made her legs look longer, and she'd managed to do something with her hair that actually looked intentional. She'd used some of the grocery money to buy drugstore makeup, and while she was no expert, she'd managed to create a look that made her feel elegant rather than overdone. You look really pretty, Tyler said from the doorway, his voice full of genuine admiration. Thanks, kiddo, Shayla said, turning to face him. You sure you're going to be okay here alone? I'm 16, not 6, Tyler rolled his eyes. I'll be fine. Besides, Mrs. Jackson next door said I could call her if I need anything. Mrs. Ida Jackson was their elderly neighbor, a kind woman who had been checking on them since their mother died. Shayla had told her about the dance, and Mrs. Jackson had insisted on being available for Tyler. At 6:30 exactly, there was a knock on the door. Shayla's heart jumped into her throat. She opened it to find James standing there in a perfectly tailored black suit with a blue tie that almost matched her dress. Hi, he said, his eyes widening slightly as he took her in. Shayla, you look absolutely beautiful. Thank you, Shayla said, feeling her cheeks warm. You clean up pretty nice yourself. James smiled. Tyler, good to see you, buddy. You feeling better? Much better, Tyler said, grinning. Thanks for sending that doctor. Anytime, James said easily. He turned back to Shayla. Ready? Shayla grabbed the small clutch purse she'd borrowed from Mrs. Jackson. Ready. The drive to the Riverside Hotel felt surreal. Shayla watched the city lights blur past her window, her stomach a tangle of nerves. This was really happening. She was going to walk into that charity dance with a man who looked like he belonged on magazine covers, collect her bonus, and hopefully slip away without too much attention. You okay? James asked, glancing at her. Nervous, Shayla admitted. What if they don't let me in? What if they say I'm not entitled to the bonus because I was fired? Then we'll handle it, James said calmly. But I don't think that will happen. You have documentation, right? Shayla patted her clutch. The invitation and my employee handbook with the relevant section highlighted. Then you'll be fine, James assured her. The Riverside Hotel was elegant, all glass and modern architecture with warm lighting spilling from its tall windows. A valet took James's keys, and another attendant held the door as they entered the marble lobby. Shayla felt every eye turned toward them. She held her head high, channeling every ounce of dignity she possessed, and placed her hand in the crook of James's offered arm. The ballroom was on the second floor, accessed by a sweeping staircase that made Shayla grateful for the hours she'd practiced walking in heels in her apartment. At the entrance, a young white woman sat at a registration table with a tablet. Name? She asked, smiling professionally. Shayla Thompson, Shayla said, her voice steadier than she felt. +1. The woman scrolled through her tablet, found Shayla's name, and checked them in without hesitation. Your bonus voucher will be distributed at the end of the evening. Enjoy the event. Relief flooded through Shayla. The first hurdle was cleared. Inside the ballroom, round tables covered in white linens surrounded a central dance floor. A small orchestra played soft music in one corner. People in elegant clothes mingled and laughed, drinks in hand. Would you like something to drink? James asked. Just water, Shayla said, still too nervous to trust herself with anything else. James returned with water for her and champagne for himself. They found an empty table near the back, and Shayla tried to make herself invisible while scanning the room for familiar faces. She spotted several former co-workers. Her friend Keisha. No, Shayla caught herself. Not that name. She spotted her friend Brenda, another cleaner who'd been let go in the same budget cuts. Brenda was across the room with her husband, looking equally out of place. Shayla Thompson? Shayla turned to find Mrs. Reynolds, her former supervisor, standing beside their table. Mrs. Reynolds was a middle-aged black woman with short natural hair and kind eyes. She wore a burgundy dress and looked genuinely pleased to see Shayla. Mrs. Reynolds, Shayla said, standing. Hi. I'm so glad you came, Mrs. Reynolds said warmly. I felt terrible about having to let you go. You were one of our best workers. It was strictly a budget issue, nothing to do with your performance. I understand, Shayla said, though understanding didn't pay her rent. Mrs. Reynolds's eyes moved to James, curiosity evident in her expression. This is James, Shayla introduced. James, this is Mrs. Reynolds, my former supervisor. James stood and shook Mrs. Reynolds's hand. Nice to meet you. Likewise, Mrs. Reynolds said, studying him with the assessing gaze of a woman who'd raised 3 teenagers and could spot trouble a mile away. Whatever she saw seemed to satisfy her because she smiled. Well, I won't keep you. Enjoy the evening, you two. Shayla, come find me before you leave. I might have some job leads for you. After Mrs. Reynolds left, Shayla let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. She seems nice, James commented. She is, Shayla agreed. She was always fair. The evening progressed. Dinner was served, an elaborate affair of multiple courses that Shayla tried to eat with proper etiquette. James made easy conversation, pointing out various aspects of the room or making gentle jokes that kept her relaxed. After dinner, the orchestra shifted to more upbeat music, and couples began moving to the dance floor. Would you like to dance? James asked. Shayla's eyes widened. I don't really know how to dance. Not like this. I'll teach you, James said, standing and offering his hand. Trust me. Shayla let him lead her to the dance floor. He placed one hand at her waist and took her hand with the other, holding her at a respectable distance. Just follow my lead, he said softly. Step back when I step forward. That's all there is to it. It was awkward at first, Shayla stepping on his toes more than once. But James was patient, guiding her through the basic steps until she found the rhythm. Soon they were moving together smoothly and Shayla found herself actually enjoying it. You're a natural, James said, smiling down at her. You're a good teacher, Shayla countered. The song ended and another began, this one slower. James pulled her slightly closer, and Shayla rested her head against his shoulder, breathing in the clean scent of his cologne. Around them, other couples danced. Shayla noticed people watching them, whispering to each other. She didn't understand why they were so interesting, but she was too caught up in the moment to care. This is nice, she murmured. It is, James agreed, his voice rumbling through his chest where her ear rested. Shayla felt something shift inside her, a wall she'd built around her heart cracking just a little. This man, this stranger who had become so important so quickly, was holding her like she was precious. Like she mattered. When the song ended, they returned to their table. Shayla's feet hurt from the heels, but she felt lighter than she had in years. As the evening wound down, staff members circulated with envelopes containing bonus vouchers. When the young woman reached their table, she handed Shayla a crisp white envelope. Thank you for attending and supporting our charitable efforts, she said with a practiced smile. Shayla opened the envelope. Inside was a voucher for $500 redeemable at the main office. Relief washed over her so powerfully she felt dizzy. You okay? James asked, concerned. I'm perfect, Shayla said, clutching the envelope. This works. This actually works. I never doubted it, James said, squeezing her hand. As they prepared to leave, Shayla found Mrs. Reynolds near the exit, true to her word. Shayla here, Mrs. Reynolds said, pressing a business card into her hand. This is for a housekeeping position at the Grandview Hotel. They're looking for reliable people. Tell them I sent you. It's not glamorous, but it's steady work with benefits. Thank you so much, Shayla said, gratitude swelling in her chest. You take care of yourself and that brother of yours, Mrs. Reynolds said, hugging her briefly. In the car on the way home, Shayla stared at the voucher in her hands. What are you thinking? James asked. I'm thinking that 3 days ago I was standing in the rain with no hope, Shayla said. And now I have rent money, a job lead, and Tyler is getting better. I'm thinking that none of that would have happened if you hadn't said yes. I'm glad I did, James said quietly. When they pulled up outside her building, James walked her to her door like a proper date. They stood in the dingy hallway, the overhead light flickering, but Shayla barely noticed. Thank you for tonight, she said. For everything. It was my pleasure, James said. He hesitated, then added, Shayla, would it be okay if I kept calling you? Not because of the dance or any obligation. Just because I'd like to. Shayla's heart did that strange flutter again. I'd like that too. James smiled, a real genuine smile that transformed his whole face. Good night, Shayla. Good night, James. Inside the apartment, Tyler was still awake, pretending to be absorbed in his video game but clearly waiting for details. So, he asked as soon as the door closed. So what? Shayla asked, taking off her heels with a sigh of relief. Did you have fun? Was it romantic? Did he kiss you? No, he did not kiss me, Shayla said, trying not to feel disappointed about that fact. We're friends. Friends who look at each other like that aren't just friends, Tyler said wisely. Since when are you an expert on romance? Shayla asked, ruffling his hair as she passed. Since I have eyes, Tyler shot back, grinning. Shayla hung her beautiful blue dress in the closet, fingering the soft fabric. Tonight had been magical. Tomorrow she would cash the voucher, call about the job lead, and start rebuilding their lives. But tonight, she let herself drift to sleep thinking about strong arms and patient guidance and the possibility that maybe, just maybe, good things could happen to people like her. The charity dance had ended 20 minutes ago, but Shayla felt like she was still floating. She stood beside James near the coat check, waiting while he retrieved their things, when a tall white man in his 50s approached. Mr. Westbrook, the man said, his tone respectful but familiar. I didn't expect to see you here tonight. Shayla's head snapped toward James, confusion clouding her features. Mr. Westbrook? James's expression tightened slightly. Tom, he acknowledged with a nod. Tom Harrison, as he introduced himself, was oblivious to the tension. I wanted to discuss the board meeting next Tuesday. The projections for the fourth quarter are looking strong and I think we should. Tom, James interrupted gently but firmly. This isn't the time. We can discuss business on Monday. Tom's eyes flickered to Shayla, and understanding dawned on his face. Of course. My apologies. He extended his hand to Shayla. Tom Harrison, VP of Operations at Westbrook Industries. Shayla shook his hand automatically, her mind racing. Westbrook Industries. She'd heard that name before. It was on buildings downtown. On charity donation lists. It was one of the largest corporations in the state. Nice to meet you, she managed to say. After Tom excused himself, an awkward silence settled between James and Shayla. The coat check attendant returned with their things, and they walked toward the exit without speaking. Once outside in the cool night air, Shayla stopped on the steps of the hotel. Mr. Westbrook, she said quietly. James turned to face her, his hands in his pockets. That's my last name, yes. Westbrook Industries, Shayla continued. That's your company? Yes, James admitted. Why didn't you tell me? There was hurt in her voice now, mixing with confusion. Can we sit down somewhere and talk? James asked. Please? They found a bench in the small park across from the hotel. The night was chilly, and James draped his suit jacket over Shayla's shoulders without asking. I should have told you, James began. I know that. But when you first approached me, you saw me as just James. Not as a CEO or a wealthy man or someone with power. You saw a person you thought might help you. And I liked that. What are you saying? Shayla asked. I'm saying that my whole life, people treat me differently because of what I am, James said, frustration evident in his voice. They want something from me. Money, connections, opportunities. Even people I thought were friends turned out to just be interested in what I could do for them. He looked at her, his eyes earnest in the lamplight. When you asked me to the dance, you didn't know who I was. You just needed help. And over these past few days, you've talked to me like I'm a regular person. You've been real with me. Do you know how rare that is? Shayla processed this, her emotions warring between understanding and feeling deceived. I told you everything about my life. I let you into my home, meet my brother. And you couldn't trust me enough to tell me the truth? It wasn't about trust, James said quickly. It was about wanting to be seen as just myself for a little while longer. That's selfish, I know. And I'm sorry. How rich are you? Shayla asked bluntly. James hesitated. Very. The doctor, the groceries, the dress, Shayla said, pieces clicking into place. That was all nothing to you. Just loose change. Does that make it less meaningful? James asked. I helped you because I wanted to, not because it was easy. It's different when you have unlimited resources, Shayla said. What you've done for me and Tyler, that's probably what you spend on coffee in a week. You're right, James agreed. I have more money than I could spend in several lifetimes. But that doesn't make your struggles less real, or your courage less impressive, or my desire to help less genuine. Shayla stood up, needing to pace, to move, to process. I don't know what to think right now. Think about this, James said, standing as well. Everything I've done, I did as James. Not as CEO James Westbrook. Just as a man who met a woman in the rain who impressed him with her strength and her honesty. That part was real. That part is real. What happens now? Shayla asked. Do we just go back to how things were, but now I know you're basically a billionaire? I hope we can, James said. I hope we can continue being friends, getting to know each other. But now without secrets between us. Shayla turned to look at him. In the lamplight, he looked vulnerable, worried in a way she hadn't seen before. I need time to think about this, she said finally. I understand, James said. Take all the time you need. I'll still call if that's okay. And if you don't want to answer, I'll understand that too. They drove back to her apartment in silence. When they arrived, James walked her to her door one last time. For what it's worth, he said, I really did have a wonderful time tonight. That was real, Shayla. All of it. Good night, James, Shayla said, not unkindly but not warmly either. Inside, Tyler was asleep on the couch. Shayla changed out of her beautiful dress, hung it carefully, and lay in her own bed, staring at the ceiling. James Westbrook, Geo. Billionaire. The man who had been so kind to her was someone who lived in a completely different world. A world where $500 was nothing. Where buying dresses and sending doctors and filling refrigerators with food was as easy as breathing. But was that his fault? He couldn't help being born into wealth any more than she could help being born into poverty. And he had been kind. Genuinely, truly kind. Her phone buzzed with a text message. James, I'm sorry for not being fully honest. But I'm not sorry for meeting you. Sleep well, Shayla. Shayla stared at the message for a long time before typing back. Shayla, I'm not sorry for meeting you either. Good night. It was a start. Shayla spent the weekend in a fog. She cashed her bonus voucher on Saturday morning, depositing the money into her bank account with shaking hands. That $500, combined with what remained of the $1,000 James had given her, meant she could pay her rent and have a small cushion left over. On Saturday afternoon, she called the Grandview Hotel about the housekeeping position. The manager, a friendly woman named Patricia Moore, asked her to come in for an interview on Monday. Her life was stabilizing, but her emotions were a mess. Sunday afternoon, Mrs. Ida Jackson knocked on the door with a plate of cookies and a knowing look in her eyes. All right, baby, Mrs. Jackson said, settling onto the couch with a grace that belied her 78 years. Tell me what's troubling you. And don't say nothing because I've known you long enough to see when something's wrong. Shayla had always liked Mrs. Jackson. The elderly woman had been a teacher for 40 years before retiring, and she had a way of seeing right through people's defenses. It's complicated, Shayla said. The good things usually are, Mrs. Jackson replied. Does this have to do with that handsome young man who took you to the dance? How did you know? Shayla asked, surprised. Tyler told me all about it, Mrs. Jackson said, eyes twinkling. Said his name was James and he was real nice. Also said he sent a doctor to check on the boy and bought you groceries. He did, Shayla confirmed. But that's not the complicated part. Then what is? He's James Westbrook, Shayla said. As in Westbrook Industries. He's a CEO. A billionaire. Mrs. Jackson's eyebrows rose. Well now, that is interesting. He didn't tell me, Shayla continued. Not until someone addressed him by his full name at the dance. And now I don't know what to think. What's there to think about? Mrs. Jackson asked. Did his kindness change once you knew who he was? No, Shayla admitted. But it changes everything else. All the things he's done for me, they're nothing to him. He probably spends more on a single meal than I make in a month. Does that make you less hungry when you eat the groceries he bought? Mrs. Jackson asked pointedly. Does that make Tyler's medicine less effective? That's not the point, Shayla protested. Then what is the point, baby? Mrs. Jackson leaned forward. You think because he has money his kindness doesn't count? You think because helping you was easy for him it was meaningless? I don't know, Shayla said honestly. Let me tell you something, Mrs. Jackson said. I've lived a long time and I've met all kinds of people. Rich, poor, and everything in between. The measure of a person isn't what they have. It's what they do with what they have. This young man had money and power and he could have walked right past you in that rain. But he didn't. He stopped. He listened. He helped. That says something about who he is. But we're from completely different worlds, Shayla said. What kind of future could we possibly have? Who's talking about the future? Mrs. Jackson asked. I'm talking about right now. Do you like him? Shayla thought about James's patient teaching on the dance floor. About the way he listened when she talked. About the kindness in his eyes when he looked at Tyler. Yes, she admitted quietly. I do. Does he treat you with respect? Always. Does he make you feel less than because of your circumstances? No, Shayla said. Never. Then what exactly is the problem? Mrs. Jackson asked. Besides your own pride? The words hit Shayla hard because they were true. This was about her pride. About not wanting to be the poor woman rescued by the rich man. About not wanting to be a charity case or a project. I don't want to be someone's good deed, Shayla said softly. Oh honey, Mrs. Jackson said, reaching over to pat Shayla's hand. I don't think that's what you are. From what Tyler tells me, this man calls you every day. He talks to you for hours. He seems genuinely interested in your life. That's not what someone does when you're just a good deed. What if he gets bored? Shayla asked, voicing her deeper fear. What if he realizes I don't fit into his world and moves on? Then he moves on, Mrs. Jackson said simply. But you can't protect yourself from hurt by never taking chances. That's not living. That's just surviving. After Mrs. Jackson left, Shayla thought about her words. She thought about the past 4 years of just surviving, of putting one foot in front of the other, of never having room for anything but the immediate crisis. Her phone rang. James. He'd been calling once a day, respecting her need for space but making sure she knew he was still there. This time she answered. Hi, she said. Shayla. The relief in his voice was palpable. Hi. How are you? I'm okay, she said. Processing. That's fair, James said. I want you to know I'm not pressuring you for anything. I just wanted to hear your voice. Mrs. Jackson came by today, Shayla said. My neighbor. She recognized your name. What did she say? James asked carefully. She told me you're known for your charitable work. That you've funded schools and hospitals. That you're considered one of the good ones as far as wealthy people go. I try to use what I have responsibly, James said. She also told me I was being stubborn and prideful, Shayla admitted. James laughed softly. Is she right? Probably, Shayla said. James, I need to understand something. Why me? You could help anyone. You probably have people asking you for money all the time. Why did you help me? James was quiet for a moment. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. But when you approached me in the rain, there was something about you. Your courage. Your honesty. You were desperate, but you weren't pitiful. You were scared, but you were fighting. And when you talked about your brother, I saw the kind of love that makes people brave. He paused. My parents died when I was 12. I was raised by my uncle, who was kind but distant. I grew up with money but without real connection. When I met you, I saw what I'd been missing. Genuine human warmth. Real conversation. Someone who saw me as just a person. I forgive you, Shayla said suddenly, for not telling me right away. I understand why you did it. Thank you, James said, and she could hear the emotion in his voice. But I need us to be honest with each other from now on, Shayla continued. Completely honest. I can do that, James promised. What do you want to know? Everything, Shayla said, settling back into her bed. Tell me about your life. The real version. They talked for 3 hours. James told her about growing up in a mansion but eating dinner alone most nights. About his uncle teaching him about business but never asking about his feelings. About building his company from the inheritance he received but always feeling like something was missing. Shayla told him about her mother's illness, about dropping out of community college to take care of Tyler, about the fear that never quite went away even when things were okay. Can I see you tomorrow? James asked when they finally said goodnight. In person? I have a job interview at 10, Shayla said. At the Grandview Hotel. How about lunch after? James suggested. There's a little cafe near the hotel. My treat. I can pay for my own lunch, Shayla said, but she was smiling. I know you can, James said. But I'd like to buy you lunch. Is that okay? Yes, Shayla agreed. That's okay. After they hung up, Shayla looked at Tyler, who was definitely not asleep and had definitely been listening to every word. Don't even start, she warned. I wasn't going to say anything, Tyler said innocently. Except that you're smiling more than you have in years. Go to sleep, Shayla said, throwing a pillow at him. But he was right. She was smiling. And for the first time in a long time, she was looking forward to tomorrow. The interview at the Grandview Hotel went well. Patricia Moore, the head of housekeeping, was a no-nonsense black woman in her 50s who appreciated Shayla's direct answers and strong references. Mrs. Reynolds spoke highly of you, Patricia said, reviewing Shayla's application. Said you were reliable, thorough, and good with people. Those qualities are important here. We serve a high-end clientele, and we need staff who can maintain our standards. I take pride in my work, Shayla said honestly. I might not have much, but I have my reputation. Patricia smiled. When can you start? Whenever you need me, Shayla said, trying to contain her excitement. How about Wednesday? That gives you a few days to get your affairs in order. You'll start on day shift, 7 to 3, Tuesday through Saturday. $15 an hour with health benefits after 90 days. Shayla's eyes widened. $15 was $3 more than her last job, and health benefits meant she could take Tyler to a real doctor instead of the free clinic. Yes, she said immediately. Thank you so much. After the interview, Shayla practically floated to the cafe where she was meeting James. He was already there, sitting at an outdoor table despite the autumn chill, 2 coffees waiting. I got the job, Shayla announced as she sat down. James's face lit up. That's wonderful. Congratulations. $15 an hour with benefits, Shayla said, still in disbelief. I start Wednesday. You deserve it, James said. He slid one of the coffees toward her. I took a guess. Cream and 2 sugars? Perfect, Shayla said, taking a sip. They'd had enough phone conversations that he'd learned how she took her coffee. They ordered lunch, and as they ate, Shayla found herself relaxing into the conversation. James told her about a difficult negotiation at work, and she told him about Tyler's improving health and his excitement about returning to school. I want to show you something, James said after they finished eating. If you have time. I have time, Shayla said. He drove her to a part of the city she rarely visited, where old warehouses were being converted into trendy lofts and art studios. He pulled up in front of a building that still looked industrial, its brick facade weathered but solid. What is this? Shayla asked. Come see, James said, getting out of the car. He led her inside to a large open space filled with activity. Teenagers painted murals on the walls while adults supervised. In one corner, a music class was in progress. In another, someone was teaching a group of kids how to code on donated computers. This is the Westbrook Youth Center, James explained. We opened it 5 years ago. It provides free after-school programs, job training, mentorship, and college prep for kids from low-income families. Shayla watched a young girl, maybe Tyler's age, working intently on a painting. The concentration on her face reminded Shayla of her brother when he was absorbed in something he loved. This is amazing, she said softly. This is what I meant about using what I have responsibly, James said. Yes, I have a lot of money. But I also have influence and resources and the ability to create opportunities. I can't change the whole system, but I can make a difference for some people. A young black man approached them, grinning widely. Mr. Westbrook, you here to check on us? Just showing a friend around, James said. Shayla, this is Brandon Mitchell. He's one of our program coordinators. Brandon graduated from our first class 6 years ago, James continued. Now he's finishing his social work degree and running our mentorship program. Brandon and Shayla talked for a few minutes about the center's programs. He told her about kids who'd gone on to college, about teenagers who'd found jobs through their training programs, about lives that had been changed. After they left, Shayla was quiet in the car. What are you thinking? James asked. I'm thinking about how easy it would be for you to just live in your wealthy bubble and ignore everyone else, Shayla said. But you don't. You actually care. I try, James said. I don't always get it right. But I try. Over the next few weeks, Shayla settled into her new job. The work was hard but satisfying and her co-workers were friendly. Tyler returned to school, his health fully restored. And James became a constant presence in their lives. He came over for dinner at least twice a week, bringing groceries and helping Tyler with his homework. He took Shayla to museums and parks and once to a baseball game where they ate hot dogs and cheered too loudly. He met Brenda and some of Shayla's other friends, fitting into her world with an ease that surprised her. One evening, about a month after the dance, James arrived at their apartment with a serious expression. I need to talk to you about something, he said. Shayla's stomach dropped. This was it. He was going to end things, tell her this experiment in dating outside his social class wasn't working. Okay, she said carefully. Your lease is up at the end of next month, James said. How did you know that? Shayla asked, surprised. Tyler mentioned it, James admitted. Shayla, this apartment isn't safe. The wiring is bad, the heat barely works, and I've seen rats in the alley. It's what I can afford, Shayla said defensively. I know, James said quickly. And I'm not criticizing you. But I found a place. It's in a better neighborhood, closer to Tyler's school and your work. 2 bedrooms, updated appliances, working heat. The building has security and a laundry room. James, I can't afford something like that, Shayla said. The rent is $900 a month, James said. That's only $200 more than what you pay here. How much is it really? Shayla asked, her eyes narrowing. James had the grace to look sheepish. 1,500. But I own the building and I can set whatever rent I want for my properties. You own the building, Shayla repeated flatly. I own several buildings, James admitted. It's a good investment. Look, I know how this sounds, but think about Tyler. Think about having heat that works when winter comes. Think about not worrying about rats or break-ins. Shayla wanted to refuse on principle. But she thought about Tyler, about the nights they'd huddled under blankets because the heat didn't work. About the cockroaches she scrubbed at constantly. About feeling unsafe every time she came home after dark. Would you accept help from someone you're falling for, even if it meant giving up your pride? What would you do in Shayla's situation? Subscribe and comment your thoughts below. 600, she countered. What? James looked confused. I'll pay 600 a month, Shayla said. That's what I can reasonably afford with my new salary and still have money for other expenses. You want to subsidize the rest, that's your choice. But I pay my own way as much as I can. James smiled. Deal. And I'm signing a real lease, Shayla continued. With actual terms. This isn't a gift. It's a rental agreement. Whatever you want, James agreed. They moved 2 weeks later. The new apartment was beautiful, with actual working appliances and space for Tyler to have his own room. Mrs. Jackson helped them move, and James brought friends from his company who hauled boxes without complaint. That night, after everything was unpacked and Tyler was asleep in his new bedroom, Shayla and James sat on her new couch in her new living room. Thank you, Shayla said quietly. For this. For everything. You're welcome, James said. I'm scared, Shayla admitted. Of how much I'm starting to depend on you. Of what happens if this doesn't work out. James turned to face her fully. Shayla, I can't promise you that nothing will ever go wrong. But I can promise you that I'm not going anywhere. I care about you. A lot. More than I've cared about anyone in a long time. I care about you too, Shayla said. That's what scares me. James reached out and took her hand. Then let's be scared together. Shayla laughed, the sound watery. That's the worst motivational speech ever. I'm better at business presentations, James admitted, grinning. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to. She didn't want to. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, full of promise and possibility. When they pulled apart, Shayla was smiling. So we're doing this? Actually dating? If you'll have me, James said. I guess I will, Shayla teased. You're kind of growing on me. Just kind of? James asked, raising an eyebrow. Don't push it, Shayla said, but she was laughing as she kissed him again. In his room, Tyler heard the laughter and smiled. Finally, his sister had something good in her life. She deserved it. 3 months into their relationship, James invited Shayla to a charity gala where he was receiving an award for philanthropic work. It would be their first public appearance as a couple at an event from James's world. Are you sure about this? Shayla asked, standing in front of her closet with growing anxiety. These are your people. Your business associates. What if they don't accept me? Then that's their problem, not yours, James said firmly. He was sitting on her bed, watching her sort through clothes with increasing frustration. Besides, you've already met some of my friends. They loved you. That was true. James had introduced her to several close friends over the past months. They'd been welcoming and genuine, treating her like she belonged. But this is different, Shayla said. This is a formal event with important people. What if I use the wrong fork or say something stupid? James stood and walked over to her, turning her to face him. Shayla Thompson, you are smart, kind, and stronger than half the people who will be at that gala. You've survived things they couldn't imagine. Hold your head high and be yourself. That's all you need to do. What do I even wear? Shayla asked, gesturing helplessly at her modest wardrobe. I thought you might ask that, James said, looking pleased with himself. I called Mrs. Patterson. She's expecting you tomorrow afternoon. James? Shayla protested, but it was half-hearted. Let me do this, James said. Please. It makes me happy to see you happy. The next day, Mrs. Patterson helped Shayla find a beautiful emerald green gown that made her skin glow and her eyes shine. It was elegant without being too flashy, perfect for the woman Shayla was, confident but not ostentatious. The night of the gala, James picked her up in a limousine. Tyler whistled appreciatively when he saw them both dressed up. You two look like movie stars, Tyler said, snapping pictures with his phone. Send those to me, Shayla said, hugging her brother. Be good for Mrs. Jackson. I'm always good, Tyler said, grinning. Have fun. Don't worry about me. The gala was held at the Grand Continental Hotel, a stunning venue with crystal chandeliers and marble floors. As they entered the ballroom, Shayla felt every eye turned toward them. James kept his hand at the small of her back, a reassuring presence. "Breathe," he whispered in her ear. "You're doing great." A waiter offered them champagne, and Shayla accepted a glass gratefully. The room was filled with people in expensive clothes, their jewelry probably worth more than everything Shayla owned combined. "James," a voice called out. A white couple in their 60s approached, the man in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, the woman in a silver gown dripping with diamonds. "Robert, Patricia," James greeted them warmly. "Good to see you both. This is Shayla Thompson." Shayla, Robert and Patricia Chin. "No, wait." He paused, correcting himself. "Robert and Patricia Hughes. They're on the board of the youth center." "It's wonderful to meet you," Patricia said, shaking Shayla's hand with genuine warmth. "James has told us so much about you." "All good things, I hope," Shayla said, relaxing slightly at their friendly demeanor. "Very good things," Robert confirmed. "He mentioned you're working at the Grandview. How are you finding it?" They chatted for several minutes, and Shayla found herself enjoying the conversation. The Hughes were down to earth despite their obvious wealth, asking real questions and listening to her answers. As the evening progressed, James introduced Shayla to more people. Most were welcoming, curious about the woman who had captured James Westbrook's attention. A few were politely distant but not overtly rude. Then Catherine Mills arrived. Shayla noticed her immediately. She was a white woman in her 40s, impossibly thin and polished, wearing a red designer gown and enough jewelry to fund a small country. She made a beeline for James, air-kissing both his cheeks with practiced ease. "James, darling," Catherine said, her voice high and affected. "I haven't seen you at any events lately. I was beginning to think you'd become a hermit." "I've been busy," James said neutrally. "Catherine, this is Shayla Thompson." "Shayla, Catherine Mills." Catherine's eyes swept over Shayla in a single, assessing glance. "How nice," she said, the words dripping with false sweetness. "And how did you two meet?" "Shayla asked me to a dance," James said simply. "How forward," Catherine said, laughing in a way that suggested she didn't find it funny at all. "And what do you do, Shayla?" "I work in housekeeping at the Grandview Hotel," Shayla said, lifting her chin slightly. "How practical," Catherine said. "It must be so different from James's world. Do you find it difficult to relate?" "Catherine," James said, his voice carrying a warning edge. "I'm just curious," Catherine said innocently. "It's such an unusual pairing. I mean, James usually dates women from similar backgrounds. Women who understand the demands of his position." "Shayla understands me perfectly," James said, his tone cool now. "She sees me as a person, not a position or a bank account. That's more than I can say for most people here." Catherine's smile tightened. "I didn't mean any offense." "Of course you didn't," James said, not believing her for a second. "If you'll excuse us, I need to speak with the event organizers." He guided Shayla away, his hand protective on her back. "I'm sorry about that," James said once they were out of earshot. "Catherine has always been a snob," Shayla supplied, trying to keep her voice light despite the hurt Catherine's words had caused. "I was going to say insecure," James said. "She comes from old money that's running out. She's terrified of losing her social standing, so she tears down anyone she perceives as a threat." "I'm not a threat to her," Shayla said. "You're with me," James pointed out. "That makes you a threat to every woman here who's been hoping I'd notice them." Shayla looked around the room, seeing the glances from several elegantly dressed women. "Is that true?" "Very true," James confirmed. "But I only have eyes for one woman in this room, and she's wearing a green dress that makes her look absolutely stunning." Shayla felt her cheeks warm. "You're just saying that." "I'm really not," James said sincerely. Dinner was announced, and they found their seats at a table near the front. Shayla was relieved to be seated next to the Hughes, who continued to be warm and engaging. Across from her was a younger black couple, both doctors who worked at a hospital the Westbrook Foundation funded. The food was elaborate, course after course of tiny, beautifully presented portions. Shayla navigated the multiple forks and spoons by watching others, and no one seemed to notice or care. After dinner, the awards ceremony began. James was called to the stage to receive recognition for his contributions to education and youth programs. He gave a short speech, thanking his team and the community partners who made the work possible. Then he paused, his eyes finding Shayla in the crowd. "I also want to acknowledge someone who reminded me why this work matters," James said. A few months ago, I met someone who showed me that courage isn't about having resources. It's about what you do when you have none. It's about protecting the people you love, about asking for help when you need it, about never giving up even when everything seems impossible. The room was silent, everyone listening. Shayla Thompson taught me that kindness and honesty and human connection matter more than wealth or status or power, James continued. She reminded me what it means to be real in a world that often values appearance over substance. So thank you, Shayla, for seeing me, for challenging me, for being exactly who you are. The room erupted in applause. Shayla felt tears prick her eyes as James left the stage and came directly to her, ignoring the receiving line of people waiting to congratulate him. Did you mean that? She asked as he reached her. Every word, James said, kissing her forehead. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. People approached Shayla with new interest, asking about her work and her life. Some were genuinely curious, others were clearly networking, but most were respectful. Catherine Mills kept her distance. In the limousine on the way home, Shayla leaned against James's shoulder, exhausted but happy. That wasn't as terrible as I thought it would be, she admitted. You were perfect, James said. You handled everything with grace, even Catherine's rudeness. She wasn't wrong though, Shayla said quietly. We are from different worlds. We're from the same world, James corrected. We're both human beings trying to do our best. The circumstances we were born into don't define us. What we do with our lives does. When did you get so wise? Shayla teased. I have a very smart girlfriend who teaches me things, James said, smiling. Girlfriend, Shayla repeated, liking the sound of the word. Is that what I am? I hope so, James said. Unless you have a better title in mind. Girlfriend works for now, Shayla said, snuggling closer. But I'm keeping my options open. As long as those options include me, James said. They do, Shayla assured him. Definitely. When they arrived at her apartment, James walked her to the door like always. Tyler had already texted that he was spending the night at Mrs. Jackson's, giving them privacy. Do you want to come in? Shayla asked. For coffee? I'd love to, James said. Inside, they kicked off their formal shoes and collapsed onto the couch, still dressed in their gala finery. Shayla made coffee while James loosened his bow tie. I'm proud of you, James said as she handed him a mug. For tonight. For handling all of that with such dignity. I almost punched Catherine Mills, Shayla confessed. James laughed. I would have paid to see that. No you wouldn't, Shayla said, grinning. You're too proper. Around other people maybe, James said. But around you I can be myself. That's a gift, Shayla. Don't underestimate how rare that is. They talked until 2 in the morning about the gala and their hopes and their fears. About James's upcoming business trip and Shayla's plan to take some community college classes. About Tyler's good grades and his interest in computer programming. I should go, James finally said, though he made no move to leave. You have work tomorrow? So do you, Shayla pointed out. Worth it, James said, kissing her softly. After he left, Shayla changed out of her beautiful green gown and into comfortable pajamas. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw someone different from the desperate woman who'd stood in the rain months ago. She saw someone who was building a life. Someone who had love and hope and possibility. Someone who was exactly where she was supposed to be. 3 months later, winter had settled over the city with a blanket of snow that made everything look clean and new. Shayla stood at the window of her apartment, watching the flakes fall and thinking about how much had changed in the past 6 months. Tyler was thriving. His grades were excellent and he'd joined the computer club at school. He'd even applied to the Westbrook Youth Center's coding program and been accepted. Watching her brother laugh and joke with his new friends filled Shayla with a joy she'd thought she'd lost forever. Her job at the Grandview was going well. She'd been promoted to senior housekeeper with a raise and more responsibility. Patricia Moore had mentioned the possibility of eventually training for a management position if Shayla was interested. For the first time in years, Shayla had a career path, not just a job. And then there was James. Their relationship had deepened into something solid and real. He'd met what remained of her extended family, enduring her cousin's suspicious questions and her aunt's excessive fussing with good humor. She'd attended his company Christmas party, where his employees clearly respected and liked him. They'd had their first real fight last month about Shayla's insistence on paying for things when they went out. James wanted to treat her and Shayla wanted to contribute equally. They'd compromised, they took turns paying and neither kept score. They'd also said, I love you for the first time, whispered in the dark of her living room while Tyler slept in the next room. James had said it first, his voice nervous and hopeful. Shayla had said it back without hesitation, knowing it was true. Now, on this snowy Saturday afternoon, James had called and asked her to meet him at the youth center. He'd been mysterious about why, which was unusual for him. "Tyler, I'm heading out," Shayla called. Tyler emerged from his room wearing headphones around his neck. "To see James?" "Yes," Shayla confirmed. "Do you need anything before I go?" "Nah, I'm good," Tyler said. "Hey, Shayla." "Yeah." "I'm glad you found him," Tyler said seriously. "You're happy now?" "Like really happy." "I hadn't seen you happy in a long time." Shayla crossed the room and hugged her brother tightly. "I'm glad too. And you know what? A lot of that happiness is because of you. Because you're doing so well and becoming such an amazing person." "Gross, don't get all emotional," Tyler said, but he was grinning as he hugged her back. The youth center was busy when Shayla arrived, filled with teenagers working on various projects. She found James in his office, looking nervous in a way she'd never seen before. "Hey," she said, kissing his cheek. "What's going on? You sounded weird on the phone." "I want to show you something," James said, standing. "Come with me." He led her out of his office and down a hallway to a room she'd never been in before. When he opened the door, Shayla gasped. The walls were covered with photographs. Pictures of her and James from the past 6 months. At the coffee shop where they'd first really talked. At the dance. In the park feeding ducks. At Tyler's school play. Laughing, talking, simply being together. In the center of the room was a table with a single red rose in a vase and 2 chairs. "What is this?" Shayla asked, her heart pounding. "This is us," James said softly. "This is our story. 6 months ago you stood in the rain and asked a stranger for help. You were brave and honest and desperate, and I said yes without really knowing why. Now I know why." He took her hands in his. "I said yes because some part of me recognized you. Recognized that you were important. That you would change my life. And you have, Shayla. You've made me better. Happier. More human." "James," Shayla whispered, tears already forming. "I love you," James continued. "I love your strength and your pride and your fierce love for your brother. I love how you make me laugh and how you challenge me when I'm being ridiculous. I love the life we're building together." He released one of her hands and reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. "James," Shayla said again, her voice breaking. "I know it's fast," James said, opening the box to reveal a beautiful but not ostentatious diamond ring. "And I know we're still learning about each other. But I also know that I want to spend my life with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to support your dreams and celebrate your victories. I want to be there for Tyler as he grows up. I want to build a family with you." He dropped to one knee and Shayla's tears spilled over. "Shayla Thompson, will you marry me?" For a moment Shayla couldn't speak. She thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, standing in the rain with nothing but desperation and courage. She thought about all the ways her life had changed, all the ways James had supported her without diminishing her. She thought about love and hope and the beautiful possibility of a future she'd never dared to imagine. "Yes," she said, her voice clear and sure. "Yes, I'll marry you." James stood and slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms and kissed her while she laughed and cried at the same time. "I can't believe this is real," Shayla said against his chest. "Sometimes I think I'm going to wake up and you'll have been a dream." "Not a dream," James assured her. "Very real. Very much in love with you. Very much looking forward to our future." They stood there for a long moment, holding each other in the room full of their memories. "We should tell Tyler," Shayla said finally. "Actually," James said, looking sheepish, "I already asked his permission. Last week. I wanted to make sure he was okay with this." "You asked my 16-year-old brother for permission to marry me?" Shayla asked, torn between amusement and exasperation. "He's the most important person in your life," James said simply. "I needed him to know that wasn't going to change. That I'm not trying to replace anyone or take you away from him. That we're a package deal and I'm good with that." "What did he say?" Shayla asked. "He said, and I quote, 'About time.'" "She's been mooning over you for months," James reported, grinning. Shayla laughed. "That sounds like Tyler." They left the youth center hand in hand, Shayla's ring catching the afternoon light. They drove to her apartment, where Tyler took one look at her face and whooped with joy. "Finally," Tyler said, hugging them both. "Can I be in the wedding?" "Of course you can," James said. "I was hoping you'd be my best man." Tyler's eyes went wide. "Seriously?" "Seriously," James confirmed. "You're going to be my brother. That's a big deal." They ordered pizza and spent the evening making plans. Nothing concrete, just dreams and possibilities. A small wedding maybe in the spring. A honeymoon somewhere warm. Eventually, maybe, a house with a yard where Tyler could have a dog. What about kids? Tyler asked suddenly. Are you guys going to have kids? Shayla and James exchanged glances. They hadn't talked about that yet. Someday maybe, Shayla said carefully. If that's something we both want. Why? Just wondering if I'm going to be an uncle, Tyler said, grinning. That would be pretty cool. After Tyler went to bed, James and Shayla sat on the couch, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. Are you happy? James asked quietly. Happier than I ever thought possible, Shayla said honestly. 6 months ago I thought my life was over. I thought I'd spend the rest of my days just surviving, just getting by. Now I have a job I'm good at, an apartment where I feel safe, a brother who's healthy and thriving, and a man who loves me. It feels like a miracle. You made it happen, James said. You had the courage to ask for help and then you worked hard to build a better life. I just provided some support along the way. You provided more than support, Shayla corrected. You provided hope. You showed me that good things can happen. That people can be kind without expecting anything in return. That love isn't just something that happens in movies. You showed me the same things, James said. You taught me that wealth doesn't matter if you don't have real connections. That the best things in life aren't things at all. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you need help. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the snow fall outside the window. I have one condition, Shayla said suddenly. What's that? James asked, sounding amused. When we get married, I want to keep working, Shayla said. I know you have enough money that I don't have to, but I want to. I need to know I can take care of myself. That if something happened, I'd be okay. I would never ask you to give up your independence, James said seriously. That's part of who you are. Part of why I love you. Whatever you want to do, whatever dreams you want to chase, I'll support you. Always. Even if I want to go back to school eventually? Shayla asked. Get a degree in business management or hospitality? Especially then, James said. You're brilliant, Shayla. You should have every opportunity to show the world what you're capable of. I love you, Shayla said, turning to kiss him. So much. I love you too, James replied. More than I can say. Later, after James had gone home and Shayla was getting ready for bed, she looked at the ring on her finger. It sparkled in the lamplight, beautiful but not flashy. Elegant but not ostentatious. Just like James himself. She thought about the journey that had brought her here. The loss of her mother. The years of struggle. The moment of desperate courage in the rain. Every hard choice, every sacrifice, every moment of fear and hope had led to this. She was going to marry James Westbrook. She was going to have a partner, a true partner who saw her as an equal. She was going to build a life full of love and possibility. Tyler was going to have opportunities their mother had dreamed of for him. College. A career. A future that wasn't limited by poverty or lack of options. And Shayla herself, the woman who'd once thought she'd never have anything beyond survival, was going to have everything she'd ever wanted. Not because a rich man had rescued her. But because she'd had the courage to ask for help, the strength to accept it with grace, and the wisdom to recognize that accepting help didn't make her weak. It made her human. She climbed into bed, her heart full of gratitude and joy. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the city in white. Inside, Shayla drifted to sleep with a smile on her face, dreaming of the beautiful future that waited for her. A future built on kindness, hope, and love. A future that started with a simple question asked in the rain, "Be my date to the dance?" And a simple answer that changed everything, yes. The best things in life really did come from moments of courage. From taking chances. From believing that good things could happen, even when everything seemed impossible. Shayla had taken that chance. And it had led her home.